All right, let's get right into it. Today we're going to deconstruct a really foundational and, let's be honest, super controversial text from the whole pickup artist world. I'm talking about Ross Jeffries' original book on speed seduction. Now, our goal here is just to take a straight up look at it, to really understand the system using its own words, its own framework. To really get a handle on any system, you've got to start with how it introduces itself. And this isn't just the title of the book, it's the full, unabridged subtitle. There's nothing subtle about it, right? It immediately sets this really confrontational tone and points directly at its target audience, the guy who's completely fed up because he feels like being Mr. Nice Guy just isn't working for him. So that confrontational start leaves us to the core question the whole book is trying to answer. It basically asks, what if attraction isn't about luck or, random chemistry? What if it's something you can actually engineer, like a system? The argument is that you can use a specific set of psychological tools to, well, create desire. Okay, so before we get to any of the how-tos, the book first lays out a very specific diagnosis of a problem. In fact, the entire system is built on this idea, this analysis of what it calls the Mr. Nice Guy problem, and this feeling that the dating world is just completely unfair. And here it is, stated as bluntly as possible. This quote really gets to the heart of the book's central argument, that there's this huge, fundamental power imbalance between men and women when it comes to sex. This belief? Well, it becomes the entire justification for using what the book itself calls unfair tactics, all in the name of leveling the playing field. So the book really paints this picture of a dating world that is just fundamentally unjust. It tells the reader, hey, you see those good-looking, rich guys? They have an unearned advantage. It really positions the reader as a victim of this broken system. And then, of course, the book presents itself as the secret weapon, the tool for the underdog to finally overcome it all. All right, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? Well, according to Jeffries, it doesn't start with fancy techniques or clever pickup lines. Nope. It starts with a total radical shift in your mindset, what he calls the super attitude. And this right here, this is that super attitude. It's presented as the absolute key to being irresistible. The whole philosophy boils down to this: stop apologizing for your desires, for looking at women, for even wanting to approach them. It's this direct, totally unapologetic confidence that's framed as the ultimate turn-on. This core philosophy then gets broken down into these foundational rules, and these are pulled straight from the book's appendix. You can see the themes pretty clearly, right? It's all about establishing dominance, not being needy, and flat out refusing to be controlled. It's all designed to reinforce this position of, well, perceived power. So once that core attitude is in place, the focus shifts inward to what's called the inner game. The system argues that before you even think about talking to a woman, you have to first build what it calls unstoppable confidence. And the methods for doing this? They're pulled heavily from neuro-linguistic programming. You might know it as NLP. Okay, so one of the main NLP techniques taught is something called anchoring. The idea is pretty simple, really. You link a powerful emotional state, let's say peak confidence, to a physical trigger. It could be squeezing your wrist, for example. Then later on, by firing that anchor, squeezing your wrist again, you can supposedly bring that feeling back on demand. It's like you're programming your own emotional state. All right, now we're moving from the internal mindset to the external stuff, the actual application. This is the outer game. And this is where the book gets into its most controversial material, which it doesn't shy away from. It explicitly calls these tactics unfair and hypnotic, and they're designed to directly influence a woman's state of mind. So at the very heart of this outer game is a concept called covert hypnosis. The whole goal here is to get past a woman's conscious, critical mind, her logical defenses, and talk directly to her unconscious. And how do you do that? Well, the primary tool is storytelling. The claim is, if you tell a story about someone else, you can make her experience the feelings that are embedded in that story. And the main technique for actually doing this covert hypnosis is called stacking realities. Basically, it involves telling a story inside of another story, sometimes a few layers deep, like a Russian doll. The whole point is to kind of confuse the conscious mind, making it easier to slip in these embedded commands and suggestions about feelings or actions you want her to have. And wow, this is a direct quote from one of the sample stacking reality scripts that's actually in the book. It shows you exactly how these patterns escalate, right? They go from these vague feelings to really overt graphic sexual suggestions. The language is very intentionally designed to create physical sensations in the person who's listening to the story. So, all of this, it leads to what you could call the end game. The book has an entire chapter dedicated to what it calls breaking a woman's resistance. In this system, rejection, hearing the word no, isn't seen as a final answer. Not at all. It's just another obstacle that you're supposed to navigate using, you guessed it, more psychological tactics. So here are just a few of the specific methods the book lays out for getting past a no. I mean, they range from reframing her rejection as a chance for her to grow to trying to get her to physically act as if she's already attracted. And from there, the tactics escalate into some pretty overt manipulation, like using guilt trips or just straight up telling her that her resistance is futile. And so, in the end, we're left with a pretty big question. And this isn't about passing judgment on the system itself, but more about thinking about what it reveals. When you have a system that is explicitly, openly designed to bypass someone's conscious resistance and overcome the word no, what does that really tell us about the deep-seated fears and anxieties that it's trying to solve in the first place? It's definitely a question worth thinking about.